This is the most stolen pint glass in the country. I encourage all of you to steal these glasses. I can't pay to remind you in the morning about the brand every time you open a cupboard. People don't give a shit about our brands, right? That ultimately is fundamentally true. But if you can connect with people, not only in a rational way, being on the shelf in the right way, the right price, distribution, blah, 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 but you can emotionally connect with people. That's the power, right? Hello. How is everyone? I'd like you to take your phone out, right? Wherever your phone is, in your pocket or wherever it might be. I'd like you to take your phone out and I'd like you to go to your calendar, okay? And the thing is about success is one of the important factors of success is by the time you're 35, 95% of everything you think, feel, and do is pre-programmed, right? Which means you don't think about it. You just go through life, right? So if you felt something yesterday, it's likely you're going to feel it today. Disruption is about breaking that, right? And to break it and think about success, you have to start with yourself. And the most important thing is time, right? So I'd like you to decline a meeting tomorrow, right? I'd like you to look at your calendar and I'd like you to go, I really don't want to fucking do that meeting. And I'd like you to decline it, right? I want you to do that. Can you do that for me? Yes? Okay, decline that meeting. That is important. Now, here's the thing, right? When Mavfest were like, do you want to come up and talk about Beavertown being a success? The issue is this, which is, it's very difficult to talk about success and not sound like a total wanker, right? Because ultimately, it's a bit like, yeah, mate, I get it, but I'm sure things went wrong and things didn't work out. And of course they did, right? So what I'm going to do is hopefully share some things that are actually applicable, right? And then we're going to talk about the thing that really matters, right? Which actually is all about hope, right? And hope is the most important ingredient to success. But before we get there, it is 4:45 on a Wednesday in Shoreditch. I believe that's where we are. First of all, thank you for coming and not being in the pub, right? I said to a few friends of mine, I wouldn't turn up to see me at 4:45 on a Wednesday in Shoreditch. So thank you very much. Who wants some beers? Yeah, that was the first hand. With your headphones on, I feel like I'm a hostess on a plane, right? That's what I feel like. So we're going to first class first, right? Is there anyone in economy, that's you at the back, people, that would like, okay, that's an excited person. Let's do them. So all the way back to economy. Any legroom? Any legroom? Right. Okay. Who would like this last pack of delicious neck oil? Okay, we're going to go to this person. I love you all for putting up your hands. Right, here we go. There you go. Thank you so much. Right, so with that out of the way, we're going to get on with it. Beavertown is a beer brand, right, for those people that don't know us. And we were born out of the kind of hype and the zeitgeist that was craft beer, right? And ultimately, I was brought in to take this much-loved organic brand sort of into the mainstream. But you're not really allowed to say that, are you? That's not allowed. So it was sort of to grow the brand into the mainstream. So essentially, that's what I was there to do. And an important factor of how to do that, which is absolutely vital, is about playing to the roots of the brand, right? Now that sounds obvious, and you can have a nice slide that says values and personality and all the kind of those good things that we have in brand books. But ultimately, you need to fundamentally understand why your business exists, right? There's an amazing book called The Advantage, and it's all about everyone wants to have great strategy, everyone wants to have great marketing, great finance people, all the rest of it. The advantage is about knowing why you're doing what you're doing, right? So on a rainy Monday in January, when you're miles away from payday and everything feels unbelievably shit, right? You need to know why you're turning up that day, why you're logging onto Teams. And as brand people, if you're responsible for the brand, right, it's even more important because no one else is going to live that truth but you. And you have to spend a lot of your time pushing those roots from that tree through the business. Because ultimately, that will be the difference between your brand and your competitors, right? Because there will always be someone that's younger, more exciting, different, cheaper, more available, distribution in the places where you're not, right? There will always be those things. But if you can be true to the brand, that is a pivotal difference between your brand and your competitors. Now, great brands, in my mind, should be both emotional and rational, right? And in the world of Beavertown, that means we need to be in supermarkets, we need to be on shelves and do promotion and play the same game that everyone else plays because that's what consumers expect. Because ultimately, consumers aren't wandering around going, I wonder what Beavertown's doing today. Let me go and check them out in Tesco on this boiling hot day, right? They're not going to do that, are they? They're not going to do that. We've got stuff to do with our lives. And often, one of the greatest mistakes that people can make about brands is thinking that people care about them, right? We as marketeers have to admit that people don't give a shit about our brands, right? That ultimately is fundamentally true. But if you can connect with people, not only in a rational way, being on the shelf in the right way, the right price, distribution, blah, 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 but you can emotionally connect with people, that's the power, right? Because we love things we shouldn't love. I love the 1975. I don't know why. I shouldn't, but I do, right? I emotionally connect to what they're doing. I describe them as a millennial in excess for people old enough to remember in excess, right? But I emotionally connect to them. So great brands should be both rational and emotional. And one of the key things that we did for Beavertown is we're not that serious about it, right? Ultimately, beer, alcohol, done in the right way, responsible with your mates, never too much, right? Never too much, right? Should be fun, right? It should be fun to do that. Now, we have these pint glasses. Now, I don't know, because I don't have the data to back it up, but I've said it on enough stages, so it must be true. This is the most stolen pint glass in the country, right? I don't know if that's true, but I know that people steal them a lot. And there are endless Instagram videos and endless TikTok videos of pubs basically saying, can you please stop stealing the fucking glasses, right? It's annoying. Now, from my perspective, I encourage all of you to steal these glasses, right? Go and steal these glasses, because I can't pay to remind you in the morning about the brand every time you open a cupboard, right? When you wake up in the morning to get your glass of water before coffee, yeah? Remember everyone, before the coffee, water before the coffee, right? And you open that door to your cupboard and you're reminded of the brand, I can't pay to get in there. I have to pay a fortune to get on the side of a bus or on a TV or something like that. But you're reminded of the brand every single day, right? Steal the glasses, right? And don't take things too seriously. Now, by the way, does anyone want this? This actually is a demo glass, so you can't even get these, right? This was the first person that put a hand up. Here you go. Now, don't eBay this shit, right? You will get upwards of £5, right? Don't eBay that. So just because a category is quite serious and sort of very inward-looking, and the categories tend to be quite inward-looking, right? Actually, you don't need to take it that seriously. You can do things differently. You can kind of take the piss out of each other. We did an ad once which said, is this a beer ad, right? Like, and it was a beer ad, but that's kind of all it said, right? You can be playful with it. Now, brands that are culturally relevant to the time and place when they're talking, in my humble opinion, but I'm the one with the microphone and you're the people with the headphones, so unfortunately this is how this relationship is currently working, right? Brands that are currently relevant will always be stronger than those that aren't, right? Because if you're talking about something, when people are naturally talking about it, it's going to stand out, right? So I'll share a couple of examples with you. This is a campaign that we did with Calm, who are the mental health charity, the campaign against living miserably. And when I joined, my background isn't beer, right? Like I was one of the founders and brand director of giffgaff, the mobile network, and I don't know beer, right? And I joined BIT and people were like, you can never do anything with mental health, ever, right? Because alcohol and mental health shouldn't be put together, right? And I understand that and I get that, right? But ultimately, often, people open up after a pint, right? People talk to each other in the pub, right? They share things that they naturally wouldn't. So taking something that's kind of forbidden and putting it with our brand, actually maybe we can do something that's good and add some help and is useful for people. So we did these crisps called Open Up, and basically if you bought one of our pints of neck oil or whatever, you opened up the crisp packet in that sort of classic British way in a pub, where you share, like you open it up and you share the crisps among you in some sort of communist crisp sharing communion, right? And inside the crisp packet were little prompts about how to start a conversation. So, how do you feel today? Like, when was the last time you cried? Who would play you in a movie? Some stuff was silly, right? And loads of PR and buzz and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, hopefully, it actually did make some people open up. Because the cultural link here is, we are in a mental health crisis, right? We are, right? People have never been so full of stress and anxiety. You spend 70% of your life in a stressed mode, right? How mad is that? If you drive in London, it's 85%. I've literally just made that last stat up. That's not true. That's not true. That one I did make up. But the 70% one is true, right? So maybe we're doing something good. We did a collaboration with Queens of the Stone Age, and obviously massive rock band. It was when they were going to... Album was coming out, headlining Glastonbury. They didn't want to make a music video. Someone talked to someone, who talked to someone, and all the rest of it. And basically, we made their own new music video for their new album, which is animated in our neck oil world for those people that have got the beers in front of them, right? But how cool is that? Now, here's the interesting thing. I kind of thought, right, having played in a shit rock... Actually, we were really good. We just weren't that popular, right? We were, like, way before our time. That was the issue, not talent. That had nothing to do with it. So way before our time, we're talking about Queens of the Stone Age, aren't we? Okay, fine. So Queens of the Stone Age. So I was like, oh my God, working with this massive LA rock band is going to be really difficult. The only thing they cared about is what they looked like when they were animated. That was it. So we sent them pictures of what they looked like, all good. Amazing, right? Best collaboration ever. And we've done lots of fun stuff with music. If you don't know John, go and listen to John. It's a two-piece, and they're both called John, right? Amazing, really good. Gans is great. And we've got a long-standing relationship with Tottenham Hotspur. I'm a Spurs supporter, just coincidentally. Okay, there's some good, yeah, let's go. We've got a brewery in the stadium where we brew the beer for the stadium. So it's a super cool experience for people who are into that. It's a lovely way to bring the brand to life, right? So, stand for something, know those roots, build that brand out from those roots and establish them both internally and externally in an authentic way, right? Culture plays a really important role within it. The last thing, that is the most important thing, is around hope, right? Now, the thing about hope is, I've sort of had to take a break from the news, right? I have to take a break from the news because I can't really cope with what I'm reading, right? So I have to have hope that maybe things will get better, right? I have to hold that hope. And in business, not that you're ever really allowed for this to happen, but shit goes wrong, right? And stuff doesn't work out, and we have to have hope to get us through that, right? Because We don't exist in a bubble as human beings, as consumers that are buying products. The brand doesn't exist in a bubble. And our employees and you as other human beings like me don't exist in a bubble, right? We all experience different things. So we have to have some positivity and hope to be able to get us through those times where things don't quite work out, right? And when you're growing a business, you will have those challenges, undoubtedly. Because ultimately, without people, nothing gets done. You don't have a business. People don't buy your products. People don't care about it. There's no one there to work. It's a wasteland. It's like 28 years later or months later or whatever we're up to, right? It's all fucked, right? But we don't want that, do we? We don't want the world to be fucked. That sounds awful, right? We don't want that. But there are some things that get in our way. And one of them is problems, right? Now, every problem, and this is easy to say, but we all have problems. I've got so many problems. If anyone wants to come and talk to me about my problems later, I mean, they are literally all about me. Is my hair okay? Are these creased? Like, I was really worried about creases here, but I think we're okay. These are the problems that I have, but they stand in the way of us achieving what we want. So can we think about problems as having a gift in their hands, right? Can every problem, somewhere deep within that, have something that might be a solution to the problem itself? Maybe. And the other thing that gets in the way of hope is fear, right? Fear internally. We haven't done that. We don't do that. We don't talk to mental health charities. You can't go into mental health charities. You can't do that. The budgets won't allow it. Stakeholders will panic. The creatives won't want to do it. The world will burn down and we're back to 28 days later, right? But fear is ultimately fake emotions that appear real, right? It is just fear. They are not there, right? And you can overcome them, right? By looking at them through a different lens. Because ultimately, with a strong business culture, you can get through those challenges, those fears, and those problems. Because ultimately, culture is the single most important thing that your business will have in the success that you can create. Now, you can say, Tom, that sounds like a lot of woke bollocks. I've been speaking at this for 6 years, and 6 years ago, when I used to talk about culture, people would be like, yeah, wicked. But we live in a post-truth world, don't we? Truth doesn't exist anymore. You can just say things, and they automatically become true, right? But I still believe that culture is important. And there's two things that I want to talk to you about culture. The first one is that we need to be nicer to ourselves and to each other, right? I'm convinced that when I walk around the streets of London, 90% of the conversations I hear are other people slagging off people they work with on the phone, right? I'm absolutely convinced, and I'm like, oh my God, they work for me. Maybe they're talking about me, right? We should be nicer to each other. And the second one is that bosses matter, right? Whether or not you're someone's boss today or leader or whatever you want, right? They matter. Now, Gallup say that 70% of your work environment and engagement is impacted by the person you work for, right? 70%. And everyone has a boss, right? And I had a boss once, and I've adopted the saying, which is, I won't adopt your urgency, right? So when someone comes to you at 4:49 and it's like, oh my God, I really need to sign this off, it's like, I'm not going to let that impact my environment. I'm going to make the right decision over this, right? Now, let's play a game. When you email someone on a Sunday night, and I've done this, right? What do you think the person that gets that email is thinking? Is it, A, wow, thank you, this must be really important. I'm so pleased that you've emailed me and stopped me watching Matt Baker on Countryfile, right? I'm so pleased you've done that because I will immediately get to what you need, right? Or do they think, you fucking arsehole, why the fuck are you emailing me on a fucking Sunday, right? It's B. If anyone is in any doubt, it's B, right? So we need to be nicer to ourselves and each other because ultimately what you do in a business and the culture you create will touch people. And if culture is the most important thing, it's going to have an impact, right? So tomorrow, I'd like you to go and ask your boss, or leader, or ask yourself if you run your own business, get in a mirror, right? Ask yourself something in a mirror, that's all good, isn't it? What's the one thing that we can change to make this better, right? And ask yourself, what can I do that creates an environment to do my best every day, right? Because those questions will start to attribute to the culture. Because ultimately, culture isn't something that people create and you do, you create that culture. And that culture is the single most important thing to success, right? Now, in closing, if you're comfortable doing this, I would like you to close your eyes, right? Only if you're comfortable doing this. And I'm going to tell you something. What you do every day matters more than what you do every once in a while. What you do every day matters more than what you do every once in a while. Okay? You can open your eyes. Now, if that's a little bit too heavy for you, just remember this. Be less Elon. All right? Thank you.